What's up, everybody? What is up? It is us. It's MD. You already know how it is. It's me, Quamon Star G. Avia to my left and or right, whichever way that y'all are watching this. And Mike in the bottom. And back for the third time. 1, 2, 3. The Animator Supreme. Spearheader of things like Peabody and Sherman, Unikitty, Teen Titans Go. And, of course, one of the main topics we'll be talking about, King Tweety, Miss Careen Ingle.
Hi, guys. Hello. I certainly would not say that I spearheaded Peabody and Sherman. I was an entry-level boarder. But thank you. I was sorry, did you guys see my cat?
Cat City.
Oh, look at the baby.
Oh, I don't know, Katie. I mean, this is the back of her knocking stuff off my desk, but
it's all good.
I actually thought that was a flat screen TV, though. The way it was positioned at first, the camera, I thought it was just a flat screen. But yeah, Careen is back, y'all.
Yes, I'm back. Yes. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to be back.
Yes,
thanks for coming.
Yeah,
this has been a long time in the making, as of like 6 or 7 months now. But we finally locked it in.
Yeah.
And we're very excited to talk about Jellystone Season 2, something we've all watched. We laughed all our butts off. King Tweety, which we watched, which is very great. And some other things that y'all might be interested in hearing about. So, but just in case you were seeing this for the first time and you missed out on the first 2 excursions, first, what are you doing? Watch those. But more importantly, Careen, just give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do and whatnot for those who might not know.
Hi. Hello. I'm Careen. I've worked on a lot of, I'm a director. I've directed a lot of cartoons. I write. Yeah, again, if you've seen Unikitty, if you've seen a handful of episodes of Teen Titans Go, Jellystone, and if you've seen Tweety, that's me. That's what I worked on. So if you like those shows, I did a lot of that. I don't know. And then, yeah, watch the previous episode. I talk about those a lot. So you'll get a good overview there. But yeah, I don't know. Where do you guys want to start? What do you want to?
I just want
to hit.
Oh, go ahead, Avery.
So is there a difference, since you worked on a lot of shows and this is a movie, what is there a difference between doing an animated show and an animated movie, or is it process pretty much the same?
I would say it's like yes and no. Because this movie was a direct-to-video movie, which basically means it's a movie made on a television budget. It's almost like a TV special. Like, it's not, that'll play in theaters and, was in development for years and then also in production for years. This movie was literally, this is a movie made on the same schedule as a season of television, but it's one big story instead of, 12, 11 minutes. So this is depending on if you count the credits or not, it's like 75 or 80 minutes. And it's just TV budget, TV sized. Actually, our staff was probably a little smaller than if it was a TV show. And Tweety actually had a hyper condensed schedule because this year was Tweety's 80th birthday. I think it actually was his birthday, like officially last month in November, a few weeks ago. And so they're like, we need this movie out for his birthday. And so I think we started in like October of 2020 and we shipped in February of 22. So it was about a year and a half to get out an 80-minute movie, which is very, very fast. I was still doing rewrites on the script when we started production. Like, it was like from the first draft, the studio was like, we really need to punch this first draft up. It's not, but then there was no time built in the schedule to do that. So it was like, it was rapid fire. It was full speed ahead the entire time. And normally that would be the case on TV show, but yeah, I would say it's like, it was closer to making a TV show, but it was one big story instead of a bunch of small ones. So it's like all the board artists are there for a way shorter amount of time, and then they all leave. You know, it's not like these two people are doing an episode, and then these two people are doing an episode, and then these two people are doing an episode, and there's, you know, like each one is due, you know, every 2 weeks. This one was almost the whole movie was like done in a 7-week period with like 7 overlapping people. It's just kind of, it's like, what if you made a season of TV all at once, all at the same time? Kind of is how it is making these types of movies.
That's awesome. So one thing that I wanted to know is that, you know, when these type of direct to, you know, one-off, one-shot, I guess is a better way to put it, films come out that are focused around these iconic characters, they're normally like in these like really cool situations. So how did you guys settle on the plot for King Tweety, like Tweety Bird being king to the Canary Islands?
So I'll say what happened was there was you know, Jellystone season 1 or season 1A, you know, ended, and my exec Jay was just like, do you want to work on this movie? We have to get it out real soon. Here is the premise. And the premise was Tweety becomes the king of the Canary Islands, and Ooga is there, you know, and all this. And it was a, you know, kidnapping plot and stuff. So that was like, my assignment was make a movie with this premise. So the premise was already there, like when I started. But that was all that was there. Like when I started, like they hadn't even really written an outline. Like the writer who originally pitched the premise I came in before he had written an outline. So it was like we had a premise and no outline. And then he wrote an outline, and then I revised that outline. He wasn't an animation guy. He was a writer, not from our side of the world. So and then he wrote a draft of the script, and then after his first draft, every draft of the script was me. So that's why you'll see there's teleplay credit for 2 people. That's it's because it's like he did a draft, and then I did all the drafts following. So it's and if you there, and it's the first draft was very, very different. I'm trying to think of like some of like the key differences, but like, well, I'll tell you in the very first draft of the first guy's outline, Diego wins and they let him be king at the end.
God!
And he doesn't do magic, and he was a bigger, handsomer dog, and it was like they were like, oh, actually, it looks like the dogs were supposed to be in charge the whole time. And I was like, when we were reading it, I'm like, you know, this could come. I'm like, it's weird that we would fight a bad guy the whole time and then have him be justified and good at the end after all this battling. And literally, it was just like, oh, whoops, we read this wrong. I guess you are supposed to be in charge. Goodbye. And I'm like, this also does look like a metaphor that Europeans should be in charge of the Canary.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know if that's the way, like, I don't think that's what he was trying to say, but I'm like, this is how that could be interpreted. Why don't we have the guys that we've been rooting for the whole time win? And WB was like, yeah. So like we did that, but it was like like that was a big difference. There were, that was probably the biggest difference. Also, like the family members in the Hall of Portraits, they never came back. We just saw them as pictures. The further drafts, it's like we had them come back. Ooga's part. Oh, here's another big difference from the first draft. And again, this is not me like complaining or anything. I'm just this is me basically highlighting the very common phenomenon of how different a first draft can be from a final draft. Like this is just, anytime a movie is being made, like this happens, you know, it always starts at, but so a lot of people are saying like, oh, it's weird that Ooga is Tweety's cousin in this movie because she's his girlfriend in the first movie, kind of, and in the first draft she was going to be his girlfriend in this movie as well, and I pointed out, but the premise is they're of the same bloodline, and they were like, yeah. I'm like, so they are for Tweety to have a claim to the throne, they're blood relatives. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, they cannot also be boyfriend and girlfriend. And they were like, that is a good point. So it was like, it wasn't like people were like, oh, how come they retconned this? It's like, I retconned this because the premise that WB wanted was Tweety is the long lost heir to the throne. And so I'm like, for us to do this premise and not have incest, we have to remove all romantic subtext, from this situation here. And there's a lot of parts of the script where Tweety's just like, oh, she's so beautiful. I'm like, no. Like it's
sorry, Tweety's big adventure, all of the Tweety big adventure stands out there, but that's that would have been
different. It's a different timeline. It's a different Doctor. She looks different in that one too. So it's just like that's a different world they're in. This one's she's been revised in this one. But yeah, so that's pretty common for a movie to start out a certain way because it was just like we got to get this out now, and then it's like okay, now that we have a draft, your first draft is just like you get it out, and it's like here it is, and then it's like okay, now we fine tune, and then as you're reading, it's like I like this thing we may not need. This thing might be too expensive. Oh, it'd be good to get this in there, and then it kind of goes from there. But I had to do all that by myself in my house while the movie was actively in production because the movie was also made entirely from home. Because we made it, nobody ever went into the office while we were making this movie. It was a full-on COVID the whole time production from home. So I still haven't met most of the crew in person. Still, which is nuts when you think about it, but that's the power of animation is you can make an 80-minute movie and everybody was at their house the whole time. Yeah,
that's dope though that y'all got that done with the restrictions and everything that was going on in the world, and y'all were able to create something beautiful like that because it is a good movie. I think it had everything that I think we all enjoy with those Looney Tune characters.
Mm-hmm.
I was laughing 5 minutes into it.
Same.
I'm glad you guys liked it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was really good. Really, like I said,
it was hilarious. It was
like the
we
simple
really wanted
fact...
to make. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say
we wanted to. Sorry.
No, because I was just gonna compliment
internet. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna compliment your style because I've noticed from watching Jellystone, from watching Unikitty, and watching this, your frenetic style of jokes being coherent but moving fast and still landing. It's so unique. And you should get your flowers about that because I don't think enough people give you your flowers about that because I'm like, hold on now, these are 3 separate projects that got the same type of flow. And they're very good. It's doing its job, and I'm like, this is incredible. For me, and someone who's never grown up, haven't stopped watching cartoons. So, and just acknowledging it and seeing it, it's like wow. You have her singing the intro song, the royal intro song, and then she sees that Awuga's been taken, and then it cuts to Tweety and all of that, and then the way you guys did the news and how dramatic it was, and then you have the sight gags with it too. I do have to ask: were you the voice of the Roomba? Because
the Roomba, that's me.
I knew it,
but I'm not SAG, so it's I can do sound effects, but I can't do voices, so it's technically a sound effect.
Yeah, I think,
and you can only do very, very little. I'm also the baby when that baby gets woken up during the scooter chase.
That is funny.
That was in the scratch because of the way this movie was made entirely from home. Normally you do scratch audio where a bunch of people go and each person's a different character, but it's just temporary sound. But when everybody's at home, that's logistically a huge hassle. So what you end up doing is one person is all the voices, and in that case it was me. So there's a cut of the animatic where I'm every single voice, and the actors, when they heard the scratch for that baby, they thought it was so funny. I'm like, well, we're really getting a reaction from like Reggie Davis, the guy who's that dog building the toothpick statue of David. He was like, you have to leave that crying that's clearly an adult woman in there. And I'm like, oh, okay. He just thought it was so funny. I'm like, well, and everybody got a reaction. So it's like, okay, we won't use a baby crying sound effect. We'll just keep that in. But those are, yeah.
I was going to say, for those who are watching who want a better understanding on this, on what she's talking about, follow her on Twitter, because she posts that a lot on for Unikitty and Jellystone, and they're equally hilarious. There's one from Unikitty that I want to touch on later on, but that's it was hilarious. That whole sequence was hilarious. As a matter of fact, the gag of Granny constantly crashing on that moped was so hilarious to me, and I don't know why.
That was an early input from WB, where it was like, we want Granny in this movie, but we don't want her taking up the spotlight a lot. You know, it's like, we want to be about Tweety and Sylvester, and it was just like, but we want her to be doing something action. And it was just like, what if she's just on a scooter the entire time? And it was just like, that's great, because then we do not have to animate walking. We don't have to because I think early on it was like she was doing a bunch of like extreme sports and stuff, and it was just like, how are we gonna see her jumping off a waterfall and doing this and it's like we'd have to build all this stuff. It was just like, or we can just always have her on a scooter, and it's like that works good too. So that was WB was like, put her in and don't let her leave the scooter until the movie is all done. It's like, it sounds good.
It worked perfectly.
They don't want her to be like, they wanted a higher energy granny than she is in a lot of the shorts, you know.
Yeah.
She's slightly more youthful in this one.
I like that, because I feel like we've always seen her, and I hate to say it, not droopy, but we've all just seen her chilling. We've never really seen her active like that. So that was kind of cool just to see her just in that scooter and having her own moment.
Yeah, it varies wildly from property to property. And some of them, she's just kind of an old lady in a chair. And in some of them, she's doing a lot more. But I know, like, in her backstory, she was like a spy and stuff, like during World War II. So it's just like, okay, she's an action lady.
One of my favorite episodes of the Looney Tunes show, by the way, that whole episode. But
she's like whack. Yeah.
I have to know, what the one thing that I just busted out laughing was when, you know, the news came on and they were talking about all the attributes of what makes, you know, Tweety, you know, all his markers that make him his blood related. How did you come up with the Jimmy Carter feather? How did you do it? Because that was
So in the original script, it was they had a mark on their feathers and it looked like a heart, and I'm like, we could go so much weirder than that, because that Looney Tunes always does. You know, Looney Tunes always does this thing where it's very weird, but they will tie in like things from real life into, you know, a lot of their cartoons, and they'll have caricatures of people who are real. So I'm like, well, it would be very Looney Tunes to do that. And then presidents are public domain. So normally if you want to put someone's likeness in a cartoon, you have to get clearance from legal, and sometimes that costs money, you know, sometimes you do it and then you find out later you can't. So sometimes it can be a little high risk, but presidents are always okay. So it was like, okay, we definitely do a president. It's like any head of state is fair game. And then Jimmy Carter was the president that would make the least amount of people upset. It was like we can do Gerald Ford or Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter is alive and he might see it. So we'll do Jimmy Carter.
Loved it.
This might be
depending on how close the feather is to camera, there's different level. Like our design team did, Austin did different degrees of detail on the Jimmy depending on how big the feather is. So he's more detailed, and then we have a smaller one where it's a slightly less detailed Jimmy for when it's like a medium size one.
That's that. I got to go back and watch that so I can make sure I can see if I can notice which ones are bigger than the other.
Well, it's just like when he's up close, there's more detail on like his tie and his face, and then just you remove, because when something shrinks, then the detail can get busy. So you like, it's like kind of like if you watch like on Unikitty when, or actually on a lot of shows, like you have the regular size character model, but then when they're walking around and maybe they're like really tiny in screen, it's a less detailed model, and maybe they just have dot eyes, you know, instead of like a full face, you know. So it's like a distance model. So we kind of did. We have that, but just for the Jimmy Carter feather with his one face and his one pose.
So one of my favorite things about the film was the two dog henchmen to Diego. By the way, Diego was hilarious. You know, the way
John Daly's so good. He's doing it. I don't know. He's like doing like old school camp, you know, but for now, and it totally works. And it's, I mean, for those people who are familiar with John Daly, he is not British, you know, and maybe if you're British, you'd be like, obviously, but you know, he's really transforming, you know, into a tiny dog. For this role, he's very good.
Diego, that he was baller, but the two henchmen, they kind of stole the show for me.
They liked him.
Yes, I like the fact that one of them did ASL. That was great representation.
And that was our art director's. Our art director has a friend who speaks ASL fluently, so we got reference videos, and so like that is the ASL is as accurate as it can be for a character that has 4 fingers instead of 5. But it's you know, it's based on real. You know, it was researched, and those are we were only able to do it so much because like the target audience of this movie, they're like, well, they might not be able to read, so it's just like, okay, you just got to do it when it's long enough to you know, like so that a parent could explain it, to a non-reading viewer. But yeah, it was really nice to get that in.
We appreciate the research and just actually putting it in there so that it can be, you know, noticed.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta bring this up. Even though I was kind of shook because I thought you killed them too often, I was like, whoa. I was kind of not expecting that, but they were okay at the end because
they were okay at the end. They opened a golf course,
right? But the Jesse's girl gag, for those who don't know, who might be a little bit young, Jesse's Girl was a hit song from the 80s about a guy who wanted his best friend's girlfriend. But you had a take on it that was so mind-blowing that it just reshaped how I should view the song moving forward.
Exactly.
So if you want to get into it now, I definitely would want you to get into it now.
Well, I mean, I don't want to just sit here and explain the whole joke because I want people to go watch the movie and see it. But really, it's everything they say in the movie, you know, with everything she says is my exact thought process when listening to that, you know, song. It's just like, he never says the girl's name. He obviously doesn't know her very well, you know, but he seems to really be obsessed with Jesse and the way Jesse's interacting with her. And it's like, I think he's jealous of something else, you know.
Right.
And he's a little scared to admit it.
And I just want to applaud because too often you like when it's the scenes of the henchmen, you know, looking out for the good guy coming to save the day. It'll just be some sort of, oh, well, you know, how's the wife and the kids, or you know, what are you gonna have for? But you like took it in such a unique and like, in my opinion, even more authentic than asking about someone's life, because things get awkward on the job. You don't want to ask somebody, you know, their home life. You just want to have a non sequitur conversation about something.
Izza and Green Bean are best friends. They know how each other's lives are. Also, their lives are, they don't really have much of a life outside of being Diego's henchwomen. You know, like they're both on this job pretty much 24/7, and they're best friends. So they know what's going on. So they're just doing, it's like, this is what friends talk about when they're bored on a boat in the middle of the ocean. They're just talking about songs.
Right. Like just how like
theories about said songs.
Just like how us at MD, we talk about eating fish brisket and meatball
Oh my
marinara soup
God.
sandwiches.
We're not
Stop it.
talking about that
Stop
right
it.
now. Please.
You're not
Like,
saying
I can't
disgusting.
believe you
We're
even
not talking
said
about
that.
that. Stop.
Like, seriously?
Smoked fish brisket. That is we
Oh
were
my
planning an excursion
Oh.
together, and we were talking about some of the culinary stuff. So
Is that something that you
Oh.
can even do? I was about to say, like, a brisket is
No.
Here,
No.
like,
part of the cow's anatomy. Yeah, it's dependent on it being a cow.
yeah,
oh
like
my
fish. You never had a
God.
smoked fish brisket before? Like
I mean, I might have and just not been aware. I mean, I've
No, you haven't. It's okay. We're just gonna exit stage left on that. I want to talk
the ribs
about
part of the fish. Yeah.
right, like boy was eating a po' boy sandwich. That's what he was.
No,
The
it's a
side,
smoked.
Right.
It was a meatball marinara soup sandwich, and it was a smoked fish brisket sandwich, and I
Oh
also
my
had a rotisserie chicken
God.
sandwich. But
I cannot
Mike, you had
believe
another
it.
point you were going to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
derail it. Go ahead.
I just want to say I appreciate Sylvester getting beat up the whole time. Like I love cats, but I don't know. It's just something about Sylvester that I love. But in this movie, I just loved how because it's like it's not on purpose, but he just be at the wrong time at the wrong place or something like that, and he just gets beats up. But I love it. What was your favorite thing about creating King Tweety?
Well, I liked having Sylvester get beat up a lot because he has such
Oh,
bad luck, and that's his brand. So that's fun. I
right.
don't know. My favorite thing was it's like we got to take these characters that normally we only see for 5, 7, 11 minutes at a time, and
Yes.
just kind of go ham. You know, with it. It was nice. You know, it was like, I mean, pretty much after the premise. You know, I was just working on this movie, and I was kind of given free reign to make it as weird as I wanted. You know, within the time frame and the budget, and they you know, I kind of was like, hey, what if they did this? And WB pretty much the whole time was like, yeah, that sounds fun, or just like, yeah, you could go even further, you know, with that. You know, they wanted us to play with scope and stuff. So like it was we had a decent amount of creative freedom on this movie to just kind of make it, you know, pretty much anytime. You know, it's like, what if, like, in the original script, Larry Bird was a bird named Larry Bird who played basketball. I'm like, what if we made it the actual human man? And WB
Happy
was
birthday,
like,
Larry Bird! As we're
yeah,
recording
is
this,
today's birthday?
Yes, today's his birthday.
Happy birthday, Larry Bird! You know, it's Eric Bowser's birthday today too.
That's
And
dope.
I think I am
Bowser.
recalling that we looked it up, and because Eric also voices Larry Bird in the movie, in addition to Tweety and Sylvester. So, and then they have the same
Nice.
birthday. So, happy birthday, Larry! Happy birthday, Eric!
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
And shout outs to Charlie Bird Parker too.
Yes,
Shout outs. I gotta say that was my
your
my favorite part. Lady Bird Johnson. I was like, some Lady Bird? Because I'm a King of the Hill fan. So I'm like, Lady Bird Johnson? And then Charlie, I'm like, oh, snap. We really going into it with the references that obviously people would.
If you want to know the story behind that, so it was, you know, we had all the family members from all the paintings, you know, at the beginning show up, you know, come back to help. And Larry Bird was a human man showing up, and my execs were like, we like this. Can we have more bird relatives show up at the end, even ones that we didn't see before? And it was like, sure. So what we did was we went through and I made a list of just everything I could think of that had bird in the name, you know, because that was the one thread that runs through the whole family is they all have birds somewhere in their name. And I made a big list, and it, you know, and it had like Bird Scooter and Bird's Eye Frozen Peas and like Lady Bird on DVD. And I'm like, I don't know what's going to work. We'll see what sticks, like a T-Bird car. There was like a train that was like a Bluebird class train or something. And we sent, and it was like 3 pages of things with bird in it. And we sent it to legal, and legal came back and they were like, you can have Lady Bird Johnson and Charlie Bird Parker. And that was it. And it was just like, okay. I was hoping we would get at least 3 things for rule of threes, but whatever, we can do it with. Well, actually, no, we did get 3 approved. One of the things that got approved was Birdman, like from Hanna-Barbera. But then my execs were like, we do not want to mix these properties. So it was like, okay. So Birdman was legally
Oh.
approved to show up in the movie, but he was not company approved to
I
show.
wish he
So
could have been a
legally he
post
could
credit
be
for
related
you.
to Tweety.
That would have been dope.
But
Okay, so-
that, like, we were doing the boards while we were waiting for those approvals. So there are like some very, very early drafts of the boards where there's just like a T-Bird car in the background of like some of those. Like they're like, bye, see you later. And they go away and disappear into dust. There's like a train in the background and stuff. So we had to go through and just be like, remove the car, remove the train, remove the scooter. But it was like Lady Bird Johnson and Charlie Bird Parker, and it was like kids are not going to know who Charlie Bird Parker is. So that's why the first thing he says is, "I play the saxophone," and it's like, okay, this is all you need to know. You know, that's enough to know that this is a real man that you could look up or ask your parents about.
We know who Charlie Bird Parker is.
You know, yeah.
That whole sequence was my, like, honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better third act for that movie, especially when they finally combine their magic and you think it's going to be like this awesome Power Rangers Goliath, and it's literally just a smoke cloud with all of their appendages out of there. They're like, oh, well, we'll make it work still.
And we did that to save money, but actually that rig was a nightmare to work with, because like I revised some of the shots myself. Like I did some of the notes on them, and it's like, you'd think it was a lot simpler than it was, but it's like all the parts of all their faces, and then also there's multiple glow effects, and like there's glow effects on each face and on like the glowing body. It's like it ended up being like, I'm like, oh, we'll do this, it'll be simpler than if we do something more complicated. But it was like, and it was just like, oh, it actually ended up being pretty complicated anyway. But yeah, it was we wanted to keep them small and circular so we could still do a lot of stuff with, we had 6 other family members, to play around with in that scene. So it was, yes, it's very silly, and their butts are sticking out in the back. So to say, there was, speaking of the other family members, the ones that like actually are canaries, I don't know. You guys might find this anecdote interesting, but like, so about, I don't know, like more than halfway, like through the movie, like we're about to go into animation, like we're finishing up the animatic, getting ready for lock, and we get a, like from S&P or somewhere at company, like standards and practices, and they were just like, hey, we have a question. Is Tweety's family black? And I'm like,
you watched it. You can't unwatch it. Stay tuned for more Tales of Interest.